Have you ever felt like your brain is operating on a completely different frequency than the rest of the world? While the vast majority are satisfied moving in a straight line, your mind is constantly analyzing hidden patterns, jumping obsessively between a dozen different interests. Look around your room. There's the self-help book you used as a coaster after one chapter, the expensive yoga mat under the bed, now acting as a scratching pad for the cat. On your phone, a green owl is begging you to finish the abandoned Spanish lessons. These aren't just messy corners. They represent a recurring cycle of intense interest followed by sudden, heavy embarrassment. Society frames this scattered focus as a lack of discipline. But this mental operating system functions on a specific biological architecture, one that prioritizes rapid pattern recognition over narrow specialization. The top 1% of performers master their lives by identifying the specific neurological glitches that lead to quitting. They lean into their neurochemistry to turn these discarded interests into a distinct competitive advantage. This chart maps the knowledge instinct. When you start a new skill, like photography, your brain rewards every minor breakthrough with a massive hit of dopamine. Scientists call this the novice high, the honeymoon phase where your learning speed is at its absolute peak. Then you hit the plateau. The early breakthroughs vanish. To take a truly professional photo, you now have to study the boring mechanics of light and spend hours color correcting software. At this point, your learning speed violently crashes. Your brain acts like a strict accountant, calculating that you must now provide 10 times more effort for only 1% of new knowledge. Because of a phenomenon called reward prediction error, the dopamine faucet shuts off. Boredom and exhaustion set in immediately. This isn't a character flaw. It is literal dopamine withdrawal. Your subconscious mind has decided the reward no longer justifies the investment, and it urges you to move on to something more fun. Naturally gifted people often suffer the most during this crash. If you were the smart kid who got high scores without trying, your brain became addicted to fluency. You fell into the mastery trap, where things are only engaging as long as they are easy. This leads to weak distress tolerance, the psychological muscle required to sit with confusion and the pain of repetition. Without this muscle, the act of practicing guitar drills or rewriting broken code feels like physical torture. For those who grew up in unpredictable environments, this is even harder. When your nervous system is conditioned for chaos, the quiet, slow focus required for deep practice feels like a physical threat. Quitting becomes an unconscious escape mechanism to regain a sense of safety. You can train this muscle using the 10-minute rule. The next time a wave of boredom hits and you want to grab your phone, recognize that this is the final rep for your brain. Set a timer for exactly 10 minutes and give yourself one order. You are allowed to be bored, but you are not allowed to switch tasks. During this buffer, you can stare at the screen or type nonsense, but you cannot walk away. Behavioral science shows that these urges peak and fade after about 10 minutes. Successfully waiting out that window interrupts the habitual impulse to procrastinate and teaches your brain that discomfort is the signal that mastery has begun. Often, the brain stops us before we even start. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, sees a massive goal like writing a novel as a threat. It triggers a survival response, leading to the paralysis we call procrastination. The 1% bypass this using Kaizen. You shrink the task until it is so microscopic that it fails to trigger the brain's danger alarm. Instead of planning an hour of practice, commit to playing exactly 3 notes on the guitar. Instead of reading a whole chapter, read 1 paragraph. The goal is to make the entry point an absolute joke to your fear center. Once you take that tiny action, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the logical planning center. Because the hardest part is the transition from rest to motion, this microstep often leads to a full hour of work without any extra effort. Willpower is a finite resource. Masterful performance comes from strategically tricking your survival instincts so that you never have to use that willpower in the first place. Successful polymaths quit projects constantly. The difference is they do so based on cold strategy rather than emotional exhaustion. Between the initial excitement and the final result lies the dip. Most people quit here because the work feels pointless and the dopamine dries up. This is where you apply the utility point formula. You decide to stop a skill once you have captured the core 80% of its fundamentals, the exact amount needed to support a different, larger objective. A professional photographer must spend a decade in the dip, but a writer who only needs to make better article covers has reached their utility point once they understand basic composition and lighting. They have harvested the necessary skills without wasting years on a goal that wasn't their primary mission. This type of quitting is a high-level form of resource management. It allows you to collect the gems from multiple fields to build a broader strategic foundation. This foundation is vital in the age of AI. Specialists are often the first to be replaced by automation, but bridge builders who can connect disparate fields remain irreplaceable. James Cameron fused his knowledge of deep-sea physics engineering with artistic directing. When the cameras he needed for Avatar didn't exist, he used his engineering background to build them himself. A specialist director would have been stuck, and a pure engineer would have lacked the vision. The rare combination of these skills is what allowed him to break global records. Ryan Reynolds took average acting skills and stacked them with elite viral marketing. By applying his humor to business, he built an empire out of a gin company and a football club, selling them for billions. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, suggests that you don't need to be the absolute best at one thing. Success comes from being in the top 25% of several different fields and then combining them. Your tendency to get bored is actually a biological drive to gather these unique tools. Every bit of coding, psychology, or design you've learned is a component of a rare cross-disciplinary toolkit. By stacking these skills, you move from feeling stuck to becoming an irreplaceable asset in a world starving for depth.